Yeah, trick, yeah, get on my face. What's up, my dudes? We got MX Simulator versus MX Bikes. Now, first of all, let me just go ahead and explain that something that you got to understand before you even think about anything is the fact that MX Bikes is in a lot earlier of a stage than MX Simulator. It's actually still in a beta, technically. So that's something to always keep in mind and kind of remember. And also, just letting you know, I'm only comparing both these games at their current state. Okay, so if you're watching this video a year down the line or whatever, it could be totally different, right? MX Bikes could be completely different physics. MX Simulator could be different. So it's just the comparison of both games at their current point. So it's MX Bikes Beta 10 and MX Simulator's most recent snapshot, pretty much. So that's where we're at here. Okay, so let's just start off with the graphics. Something everybody loves to get all freaked out about on a simulator, even though that's actually not even really the point of a simulator. But we'll get in here and talk about it anyways, okay? So basically, the thing that helps MX Simulator so much graphically is simply the fact that there's just so much user-created custom content for the game, whether that be objects, skyboxes, track, different decals, dirt stuff. Everything that MX Simulator has is what makes it what it is, okay? Whereas MX Bikes, it's slacking in this department because there's just simply not as much user-created content for MX Bikes. So there's just not as much stuff there. Basically, any of these sort of motocross simulators out there, they pretty much start off with the like default basic base looking tracks in the game, and a lot of you guys know that. Like, MX Simulator's default tracks look like straight up potato game from 2007 because that's when it was made, and your MX Bikes has all of its default base tracks in the game, and all of those look pretty basic and simplistic as well. That's just kind of the nature of these motocross simulators. And then what boosts them up graphically is all the user created content everybody makes for it. That's usually what does it. But the problem with MX Bikes is it just doesn't have a whole lot of people in there making, newer 3D object models and newer skyboxes and more high-res ground decals and stuff like that. And MX Simulator has all that, okay? So the easiest way to explain it to you, right? Let me kind of wrap all this up into one little explanation. Basically, like, MX Simulator is using an older graphic engine running newer graphical components, whereas MX Bikes is a newer graphical engine running a lot of older graphical components. You see what I'm saying? So like with MX Simulator, you've got all the stuff that people have went in there and made, everything from like full 3D high-res palm trees and awesome weather effects, rain, lightning effects in MX Simulator. All this stuff is not in the base version of the game. It wasn't in the game in 2007 whenever it first came out. That's all stuff that people has put into the game, user created content, right? And all the high resolution, good looking decals in the modern day MX Simulator, a lot of the newer tracks in the game now have that, where it looks very realistic depending on how you have your graphics set up in the game. If you have your graphics maxed out and you got it maxed out on your NVIDIA, your NVIDIA graphics control panel settings and all that, you got all that, to the highest it can go. I mean, you can get it looking pretty hardcore on MX Sim. And I know a lot of people look at this game as like terrible graphics and whatnot, but you can get it looking pretty good. But that's the thing. It's like a super old engine running a lot of good looking user created stuff, right? Whereas MX Bikes is more so, it's like it's running a newer engine. So I don't know exactly what engine MX Bikes is running, but everything is going to have that little bit more of a modern day video game graphical like look to it, as far as edges on 3D objects and stuff like that. MX Bikes is going to be a little bit smoother in that sense. It's not going to be such harsh, sharp edges like the old school MX Simulator graphics can kind of give you the feeling of at times. But the thing about it is with MX Bikes, you're really just mainly riding on default looking tracks. You know, you're riding on like base, like day one type of looking tracks in the game, and that's what kind of limits the overall. Like when you try to compare graphics this versus that game, that's what limits MX Bikes so much in that sense. Even though MX Bikes is a newer engine and it's going to look better in certain ways, but it's just there's not enough user created content in MX Bikes to really give you that full scope of graphic stuff in it. So one day, if a lot more people get into making user created stuff for MX Bikes and start really opening the doors, you know, and you get in there and start getting super tropical tracks, and you get in there and get all kinds of crazy weird design tracks and all these cool objects and lighting effects, and you know, that's what makes MX Simulator what it is today, difference from the way it was back in, like, you know, 2007, 8, 9, and 10. It's a totally different game, even though it's the same exact game. It's because people are putting in newer high-resolution decals. They're making the tracks a lot different. You know, the scaling of everything's bigger. The bikes are faster. So even though you have the same game, same graphical engine, everything looks way better now just from how many people make stuff for MX Simulator. So that's sort of the comparison right there as far as graphically. So either way, that's pretty much your graphics comparison. I mean, I like both of the different games for different reasons graphically. You know, I like MX Simulator for the certain little touches that it has in its game and certain little things like that, but with MX Bikes, I also like its graphical system for what it is as well. So it's one of those things you're going to have to play the game, and everybody plays with different graphical settings. If you don't have that puppy maxed out, not only in-game, but also in your NVIDIA settings, then you're not really experiencing the full graphic capabilities of that game. And 90% of you guys out there aren't doing that. You're not running MX Simulator max the fuck out with your NVIDIA settings max the fuck out, where that dirt's looking like, you know, like 4K damn near resolution dirt. Like, a lot of you guys don't even run that on MX Simulator. And then some of you guys are just running on the default stock tracks of MX Simulator, and you're out here giving your opinions on the graphics on MX Simulator. Like, let that shit sink in. You ain't making no sense, bro. If you ain't really playing this game on new tracks with the highest graphical settings, you don't fully understand the graphics capabilities of MX Simulator. You just don't get it. And it's really just that simple. Either way, let's move on here to the physics, okay? So, it's a good one right here, boys. The most important thing to not only just all motocross games, but especially a simulator, the physics of it is everything. It's what makes you want to come back and play it. It's what makes it fun. It's what makes it feel like something differentiating from a it's just standard arcade motocross game. And it's kind of crazy that MX Bikes is really the only game that's tried to come out here and compete on that super simulator level with MX Simulator. I've not seen any other motocross games out here do that. I could be wrong. There could be some other game that's trying to do the whole simulator thing, but all I know of is MX Simulator and MX Bikes. I mean, those are the only two games that I know that are really like that, you know, that are trying to do the real-life motocross in a video game, okay? And the thing about it is when it comes to MX Simulator, they have the physics 100% like a real-life dirt bike. I say they, it's really just one guy, JLV, but let's just get that straight, right? But basically, with MX Simulator, the way the bike feels, okay, the way the movement, forward, back leaning, side leaning, turning, coming over jump faces, all of that different stuff is 100% perfect on MX Simulator. So any other game out there that tries to make a simulator and tries to compete with MX Simulator, they're never going to be able to get it better in that category than MX Simulator, because you can't get it more real than 100% real. You can't do it, and that's what MX Simulator is. You understand what I'm saying? It's 100% like a real-life dirt bike. So it's not like you can just come out with this other motocross game over here and it feel more real than MX Simulator. It's literally impossible. You can't do it. You just can't. You can make the graphics better, you can do all this other stuff, but when it comes to how that bike actually feels, it's impossible. There will never be another motocross game that will be better than MX Simulator. You just cannot do it. You can get something that's kind of close to the way MX Simulator feels, but it's got its own little different flair to it, its own little different vibe to it, and that's kind of what MX Bikes is to a certain extent. But like, and especially on MX Simulator, when you get to the point where you start learning how to adjust that stability and you start learning how to skirt around with some of the different bike settings and stuff like that in the game, your rider mass distribution, like where the weight is on the rider. Once you learn how to do all that, you start to fully understand how real MX Simulator really feels. I feel like a lot of people get into MX Simulator and they don't really even understand how to adjust the bike. They don't realize the full scale of how much you can actually change on the way the bike can feel within MX Simulator, and they never get to a certain skill level to really experience all that. So then they give their opinions on the physics of MX Simulator and don't fully understand how real it actually is, right? But coming from somebody that has put way too much time in this game, into MX Simulator, and going through so many different types of ways to set the bike up. I mean, I've been through it all in this game, bro. Done every type of different thing set up bike wise, just about that you could possibly do. So I understand the game to a pretty maximum level in that sense, as far as like how the game can actually feel. And I'm telling you, it's exactly like a real life dirt bike, right? So when you're trying to start comparing MX bikes to that, something that's perfect in that category, it's just hard to do it. It's just going to be hard for MX bikes to ever really get to the point where it's like, okay, the MX bikes feels more real than MX Simulator. You know what I'm saying? I just simply don't think that's ever going to happen. It can't. Like, once you understand, it's so hard for me to explain this because a lot of people just don't really get it in their head. Whenever I say MX Simulator feels exactly like a real dirt bike, I mean it feels exactly like a real dirt bike. Like I'm saying, you got to understand, MX bikes, you can't get it more real than 100% real. And MX Simulator has already captured that. So you're never gonna get better than that. It's impossible. You can't do it. You just can't do it. Now, MX Bike certainly has its own little cool feelings to its physics system in its game. Like, especially with this Beta 10, with the new turning, the new cornering, and the way that in MX Bikes, you jump off of a jump, and you got that super realistic gravitational pull back to the ground physics system to it. You've got it's obviously slacking a lot in its, like, leaning forward, backwards, I feel like, still on MX Bikes. Still some old buggy things here and there that they haven't really got fully fixed in the game yet. But it's got a pretty cool little, like, turning system to it. Kind of gives you quite the realism type of feel. It's hard to explain. I mean, MX Bikes feels real, but just to a certain extent. So yeah, I mean, when it comes to the physics, man, like, MX Simulator, it's just the ultimate legendary. I don't know what else you want me to say about MX Simulator. I feel like I've said all this before, but I gotta say it again. Like, you will never get a motocross game that feels more realistic on the bike than MX Simulator. It's never gonna happen. So that's what I'm saying whenever I say, like, MX Bikes, even trying to compete with MX Simulator is a hell of a task in itself, because JLV has just figured out a perfect physics system to it, man. It's just, it's so perfect that it's like, it feels like you're trying to explain, that you saw a Sasquatch or something. Like, it's so unbelievable that me trying to explain how real MX Simulator is like me trying to explain that I've seen a ghost or something. That's literally what it feels like. Like, shit, dog, I feel like I'm out here squatching trying to explain that I've saw a Sasquatch. Like, you're trying to explain something that's just so illogical. You just don't even think that there can be a motocross game that can actually feel like a real-life dirt bike and give you the exact feelings that a real-life dirt bike does. But I'm telling you, MX Simulator is that game. Forever and always. So MX Bikes, it's got its realism feel. It certainly does. A lot more than, a lot of arcade motocross games out there. And if you get both the games in third person, you start kind of panning it out and looking at the bike and stuff. And I'm by third person, I mean like if you get it like in a free cam mode and look at the bike riding off in the distance, like MX Simulator damn near looks like a real life dirt bike. I mean, a lot of times you can't even tell. You're like, is that a real life dirt bike or is that a video game? What is that? That's how real MX Simulator can look at times. And MX Bikes also has a bit of that look as well. If you're looking at it free cam mode on MX Bikes, you can you get that same sort of look to it. Like, just that gravitational of like when you see the bike come up off a jump and slowly fall back down, but not like pillow level floating in a cloud like some arcade motocross game. It's got that realistic gravitational pull to it, and that real feeling like on MX Bikes when you jump a jump and really feeling like you're actually in the air. It can give you that feeling in that game as well. But I think MX Bikes just suffers from some just not finished enough of a physics system yet. It's just not finished. Like, that's really the only way to explain it. And they're getting there. I mean, with the Beta 10, they're making massive improvements to the turning and to the landing and some of the little buggy physics things that was happening to the game. They're working on it, man, but it's going to have a certain feeling, but I don't ever think it's going to take over MX Simulator, right? I don't see it ever doing that. It's a cool little alternative simulator game, right? Even if you enjoy MX Simulator, you can go mess around on MX Bikes. Just a fun little game to go play and just try out something different, But there's 10 times, maybe even 100 times. There's maybe 1,000 times more of the actual community on MX Simulator than there is MX Bikes, and I'm not saying that to say, try to be like cocky or whatever about it. That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm just saying that in the sense of it just makes the world of difference when you've got more of a community playing a certain game over another game. Because it's like, you got custom tracks coming out for MX Simulator pert near every day, still to this day, and it's a 10-year-old game, decade-old game. There's still a custom track coming out every day on this thing, man. Still getting updates. Right? That's crazy that there's still that level of a community on MX Simulator. And then you got the whole big pro racing. Enough of a pro racing to even have an amateur, type of skill level and racing and all that. You got amateur racing, you got pro racing, 250, 450 class. All this stuff got a very official feeling to MX Simulator in that sense, like real-life motocross in a video game, in the sense of how the bike feels, everything about it. But not only that, but it's getting to the point, and has been to the point, where MX Simulator's also got the pro AMA feeling racing that real life has, but in a virtual world, right? And they've struggled a little bit with that the past year or so, but I think they'll bring it back around. But either way, whereas like MX Bikes, there's just nowhere near the community there. So you don't have as many people playing in the random racing servers. You're not going to have this big like pro racing scene. You're not going to have nowhere near the amount of custom content on MX Bikes that you do MX Simulator. You're going to have a fraction of the amount of custom tracks, which makes a massive difference, because that's what you're riding on. That's the content for the game. If it wasn't for tracks coming out every day for MX Simulator, it wouldn't be the game that it is. You just always got something new to ride on. Then you got crazy-ass people like Spencer Turley is making all these tracks out there. It's never been made before in the history of any motocross game, right? So you got that coming out. So it's just a matter of MX Simulator it's better than MX Bikes for a lot of different reasons, but it's not to just hate on MX Bikes, because MX Bikes is trying to do something. They got a lot of... The cool thing about MX Bikes is it is trying to do something different. Even though it is trying to be a motocross simulator, it's trying to do a lot of things that MX Simulator doesn't do, which basically, like MX Simulator, the feeling on the bike, like I said, 100% like a real-life dirt bike. But there's certain little features that MX Simulator doesn't have to it. For instance, it doesn't have a tear-off system. You don't have mud flying up on your goggles like you would in real life and actually having to hit a button and pull the tear off. MX Bikes has that. That's one really big thing you notice as soon as you get in the game. You start getting dirt up on your goggles and MX Bikes. You're like, oh shit, it's pretty realistic. And then you got to hit a button to actually pull your tear-offs off in that game. So it's a really cool feature that it has. It actually has a dedicated weather mode to it as well, kind of like the Fisher Monster Energy Supercross game. So like basically with any track, you can put the rain on. It'll make more mud up on your goggles, stuff like that in MX Bikes, and you can do that. Whereas MX Simulator doesn't really have like a dedicated weather mode, but you can go in there and make your own custom track and put rain on it, yourself, and put lightning effects on it yourself. And you can turn roost on in MX Simulator, but it doesn't actually fly up on the screen in any kind of way. So, like, that's what I'm saying. Like, MX Simulator is missing a lot of those little meticulous little things like that, whereas MX Bikes has some of those things, but and MX Bikes also has, like, now with the Beta 9, it's got more of a realistic type of gearbox to it, which MX Simulator doesn't really have that. But it's weird because it's almost like MX Bikes takes certain things to an absolute crazy extreme realism level. You know what I mean? Like, literally, if you're wide open in MX Bikes now, you can't shift without either feathering the clutch or letting off the gas. You literally can't shift up. So it's just, certain aspects of MX Bikes take it like super, super, super realistic, almost like not even gameplay. It's not even like, I don't know how to explain it. It's pretty difficult. I mean, it's very cool to see all the things that MX Bike's putting in its game, but it almost takes away from the gameplay experience when you take it certain things that far. You understand what I'm saying? Whereas MX Simulator, it keeps it in just a simple form, simple way, but it's realistic as hell as far as the actual bike feeling is, right? Now, I would love to see a tear-off system on MX Simulator, stuff like that. I think that'd be cool. I think that belongs in MX Simulator, certainly. And I think there needs to be forced roost on MX Simulator, and then certain tracks have more roost and certain tracks have less roost, like it is now. But I think it needs to be a forced roost system, and that roost can actually fly up on your goggles and stuff. And you have to pull a tear-off system. But as far as like having a realistic quote-unquote gearbox on MX Simulator like MX Bikes has, I honestly think that'd be taking it a little too far in MX Simulator. You know what I mean? Like, there's something weird whenever you're holding the gas wide open and you're trying to shift through the gears and it won't shift because the gearbox is trying to be like, super, super, super realistic, and you can't even shift up, right? That gets very bizarre feeling. It needs to, I like it better where it's just, you're on that gas and you're shifting, dog. It's enough to just have automatic shifting in a game, but then to go in there and have the realistic gearbox and the gearbox simulation, it's a very cool way. I don't want to, me saying all these things is not me hating on MX Bikes. I'm just simply saying, it has a lot of like super taking it to the very edge realism aspects to it that almost get to the point where they're like, they take away from the actual core gameplay experience of the game. So it's just, they're two different experiences now at this point. You see what I'm saying? With the MX Bikes Beta 10, it's got a lot of little things like that to it. So there's a lot to it in that sense. But like with MX Simulator, I don't know. It's hard to explain it. But like, yeah. So you can get to the point where you put something that's like trying to be so realistic in a game that it becomes to where you almost can't even like play the game. You know what I mean? Like for instance, let me just start saying some things right here. Let's just say let's say it was totally realistic, right? Where, I don't know, you start getting arm pump in the game, you get tired in the game, your dude can't even ride on the bike anymore after a certain amount of laps, or whatever, you get a rock stuck in your chain and something like that crazy happens, or what, you get to the point where then it gets to the point where it's not even a game. It's like trying to be too much like real life. So what I'm trying to say here is MX Bikes is definitely kissing up on that level of realism where it's like almost going too far in certain occasions, but it's cool at the same time because it's doing something different than MX Simulator. You know what I mean? But it's not, MX Simulator keeps it in this honed down, super realistic on the bike feeling, but you can actually still play the game in a control sense pretty simplistically. You know what I mean? You got your front, back brake, shifting, and you can shift from first to fifth gear anytime. Obviously, you're going to bog the bike out if you do that in a really bad time. You still got to have control with the way you're shifting and timing and all that, but it's not like so realistic to the point where the bike literally won't shift, because you got the throttle wide open, even though you're hitting the shift button, trying to be super simulating like MX Bikes is, right? So that's kind of the difference there, MX Simulator is that combination of the most realistic on-bike feeling, but you can actually play the game. You know what I mean? Whereas MX Bikes is trying to go levels to the point of like super, super, super realistic. So that's your difference on that side of it. But yeah, I mean, as far as just sheer track content, I mean, it's just uncomparable. There's probably like 10,000 tracks for MX Simulator. And there's probably like, is there even 100 tracks for MX Bikes? I don't even know. I know there is some custom like Supercross, and they got the James Stewart compound for MX Bikes, which is really cool. But other than that, it's really just the stock tracks in the game. You know what I'm saying? That's basically what it is. I'd say there's probably like 50 total tracks on MX Bikes. If you're lucky, there's like 50, including all the custom stuff, all of that, versus like 10,000 custom tracks on MX Simulator. I mean, it's just a mountain of difference, as far as just sheer track content that you can actually ride on and stuff like that. But, yeah, man, either way, it's just I don't know, man. They're certainly similar games, but different games at the same time. It's really the only way to explain it. I think MX Bikes can certainly grow in popularity, especially since it's going down the VR route and a lot of people playing it. MX Bikes, to me, almost feels more like a real-life riding a dirt bike demo than it does like a full game. You know what I mean? Which, it's a beta 10, right? But still, to this day, beta 10, we're on beta 10 here. So they've been at it for a minute, right? Been at it for 10, but I feel like a rookie, you know what I'm saying? So that, they've been at the beta thing for a while, but it just, whereas MX Simulator it's like a real dirt bike, but it feels like a full game. You know what I mean? You feel like you've got this, I don't know how to explain it. There's just so much more depth to MX Simulator in every way. Even though they both do feel realistic, like a real dirt bike. Like I'm saying, MX Bike's more of like it's like what you would think you'd run into at a real life Supercross race, like in the little pit party or whatever. They got little VR glasses on. You hop on there and you ride on this realistic feeling bike for a couple laps or whatever, and then you get off of it. That's more like what MX Bikes feels like to me than like a MX Simulator that's literally like real life motocross in this virtual world in the entire sense of it. There's like unlimited tracks damn near in MX Simulator like there is in real life. So many different tracks you can go to in real life. So many different tracks you can go to in MX Simulator. There's the real life pro racing on MX Simulator that's, full gate. You got high intensity. People are really, really trying. Like, it's no joke. The pro racing on MX Simulator, you're putting hours. You got to play the game every day. Got this feeling like it literally is this direct transition from real life motocross to virtual motocross, and that's what MX Simulator is able to capture. But either way, they're both two really cool games. I enjoy both of them. I certainly think MX Simulator is worth way more of your money. It's way more of a finished product. It's way more of a, really like what you think in your head is a full-blown MX Simulator. Obviously, hence the name, a full-blown motocross simulator. Whereas MX Bike's a little bit different. Not as finished of a game, just kind of certain elements are different. Stuff like that, a little bit harder to kind of set the bike up, figure out what the hell you're doing. Got some little weird buggy things on the bike still with MX Bikes and stuff like that. But, yeah, that's pretty much where we're at with both games in the current stages. And a lot less downloadable content, that being not only tracks, but also bikes, skins, all this gear. It's a lot more limited on MX Bikes. You're not going to have the most newest every single 2019 gear set and jersey and AMA replica track and all this stuff that MX Simulator has every single year. That's not really how MX Bikes is. It just doesn't have the community to get it to be at that point. So very different games in that sense. Certainly something to think about when you're putting them side by side, like which one you're going to buy or whatever. I would certainly say at this point, you need to spend your money on MX Simulator first before you do it on MX bikes. You definitely need to play MX Simulator and really get you a good taste of that and what that game has to offer and the full experiences of it, and try to get at least to an amateur, preferably even more closer to the pro level before you just totally give up on MX Simulator and just, cast it away like, oh, I'm never going to play that game again. You really got to give MX Simulator the time of day to really get the full enjoyment out of it, because it's that deep of a skill gap. You know what I'm saying? It's that deep of a game that, like, if you just hop on MX Simulator and look at it at a base level, like you look at it like an arcade motocross game, a lot of times you don't get anywhere with MX Simulator because it's like 100,000 levels above what a arcade motocross game is skill gap wise. So then you don't ever get to that speed level in MX Simulator, and that movement level you don't ever even get there. You know what I mean? Because you don't play the game long enough. So then you don't actually fully experience what MX Simulator actually is. Whereas MX Bikes, it's a little bit easier, I feel like, of a game overall. It's got a little bit more arcadey elements to MX Bikes than MX Simulator as far as the on-the-bike feeling. It's just a little bit easier to play, and that's just something I've noticed with it, just in general. MX Bikes just a little bit easier to get around the tracks and stuff at the beginning than MX Simulator is, but yeah, I mean, I would certainly, go through the whole MX Simulator thing and try that out and go through it all before you ever even think about buying MX Bikes. MX Bikes is kind of one of those little extra, if you're just a motocross lover to the absolute death of you, or you're really trying to support these games out here, or you really love MX Simulator and you love simulators and you want to try another simulator, you're to that point where you're wanting to do that, then you might want to think about shelling out the money for an MX Bikes games. But it's to come with the caution of knowing that it's a fraction of the game of MX Simulator, and I think they're pretty much the same price. They're somewhere in that $30, $40 range. They're not like full AAA price, but they're, somewhere in that middle range there. I'm pretty sure I don't even know how much MX Bikes is. I think it's in that range, like $30, $40, and that's how much MX Simulator is as well. So, MX Bikes just kind of a little sprinkle on top if you want to go dabble into it. It's the accessories. It's not the main course. It's the seconds. You know what I mean? MX Simulator is the head honcho, the big boy. MX Bikes is the little side stepchild that's kind of like it, but not nowhere near as good. That's kind of the what you're looking at. I mean, I hate to, and it's not me shitting on MX Bikes. I mean, I think it's awesome that they're attempting to do it. And I give them as much support as I possibly can, man. I mean, I'm going to be starting making a lot more videos on MX Bikes. I have no hate towards it at all, or Piboso, or the creator, or any of that. It's no hate towards the game. I just got to be real with you. You know what I mean? When it comes to this game versus that game at their current states, it's night and day, really. When it comes to actual gameplay and the things that really, really matter in a motocross game, MX Simulator is light years. Even to another simulator, it's light years, and that just goes to show you how amazing MX Simulator actually is. So either way, appreciate you guys watching all the videos. Gonna be making some more cool videos like this. Got some more ideas out there, so it'll be a lot of fun. But appreciate you guys watching all the videos. Later, dudes.